Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this final session of the ETRailShow 2024. This session is themed Facelifting and Remodeling Indian Railways. Having stated the topic, let us first look at the scale of, scale that we are talking about that needs to be addressed. India is the fourth largest rail network in the world. The Indian Railways operates more than 13,000 passenger trains every day and close to 8,500 freight trains serving 23 million passengers and 3 million tons of freight daily from roughly around 7,350 stations. So that's the scale we are talking about. And just to put that in perspective, 23 million is the number of passengers transported by the railways daily, and the population of Australia is 26 million. So you can understand the massive scale that we are speaking about. So, uplifting such a large network, which is almost 2 centuries old, is not a joke. It's a serious business. Nevertheless, is the need of the hour. And that is what we are going to, talk about here today. So, and one of the most important thing when you have to facelift railways is the railway stations. We heard about the terminals also. So railway train stations are also very important. And recently, Amrit Bharat station scheme with an outlay of more than 25,000 crore was announced. Now, my question, Mr. Louis, I'll start with you, is that, this is probably the nth time that the station redevelopment program has been relaunched. IRSDC was there, it was dissolved, it could not do it. For 15 years, nothing has happened. There are a couple of examples that we have which have been redeveloped. So my question first is that what are these main issues for little or no interest from because you've tried it on PPP mode, obviously, till now, and there has been no response. Even for Delhi, there was one bid which was technically cancelled. So what have we been lacking and what differently are we going to do this time?
Thank you, Mr. Saurav. First of all, yes, you are correct that station development is being talked from not now. It is maybe since 1990s. In some or the other avatar, the different concepts have been going on. That is number one. Number two, saying that IRSDC could not do it, I would say is absolutely far away from the facts. The only station development which would happen in the country was by IRSDC. The challenge you mentioned, the challenges were IRSDC was given a mandate, make money out of air and convert a station at par with airports. So that was a huge task. It was to be done entirely from real estate. Developing infrastructure entirely from real estate globally has not happened. So IRSDC was doing something which was globally not achieved. So it was doing a very, very difficult uphill task. And that task was in a time when even the coordinates were not defined in terms of when we are saying commercial development, which will fund, who will sanction that commercial development? Under what act will it be approved? So there were a number of things which were done by IRSDC, including establishing IRSDC, Zonal Railways, RLD as the deemed special planning authority, making the development control norms, the form-based codes for the entire development, how exactly the living heritage of stations will be, because a lot of stations are heritage stations, so how exactly the heritage will be handled, how exactly the environmental issues will be handled. So getting the railway stations and commercial development defined as infrastructure under the harmonized list of infrastructure from the Ministry of Finance, having the priority sector lending established for this. So I think number of things were done by IRSDC which laid the highway for doing this entire station development. Having said that, there was a very difficult task which was given, but when it comes to dealing with land, everybody shakes. And especially in railways, where railway is a transport organization, it's not a land development organization. So the cream of railway officers is always one who runs the trains, not the one who maintains the land or develops the land. Land development was not even a concept. So as a result, railway as an organization, as an institution, was quite averse to dealing with land at all. And hence, there were a lot of resistance when it came to giving land on lease. And then came the concept, because the government was very keen. Prime Minister had made the statement that we will develop these many stations, etc., etc., and then number of other statements were made. So government then decided in 2021 that it will invest its own money and take it up on EPC mode. So what was envisaged that we will raise about 78 to 80,000 crores of private capital for doing station development. So now all that capital is being invested by the government. It is being done on EPC. The same thing happened in case of highways as well. So nothing, I would say, very different in highways. Few highways could be done on PPP, where you had toll tax also. But in the stations, there was no user charge at all. So stations, developing stations was even more complex, and in fact, much more complicated than highway development, because developing a station is akin to doing an open heart surgery on an athlete while he's running the marathon. It is as complex as that. In one sentence, you can understand all the complexities of station development. I need not explain further. So, even in highways, with the user charges being available, many of the highways could not be taken up. Government had to come for the EPC mode, and now they are going in for monetization. So that is the learning. At that time, yes, we tried to convince the government that you cannot expect private sector to put all its money unless until you put your skin in the game. So now the government has put all its skin in the game, and now I think the time is to start monetizing also simultaneously. Otherwise, there is a possibility that you can create a world-class structure, but you may not be able to maintain it. So world-class to third-class transition can happen quickly in case if you do not go into the aspects how exactly we'll be able to maintain it, monetize it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Loya. And I remember, we increasing the number of lease years from 1522 till up to 99, I believe, if I'm not wrong, 45 to 90, yes. And also that user fee was a very big challenge, because one aspect of railways is to serve serve everyone. You cannot have like a user development fee as you have at airports. So that was a big challenge that was there for ISDC, I understand. Mr. Srivastava, I would want to come to you from an external stakeholder. What is your assessment of the railway station redevelopment? What were the shortcomings? What were the things that really did not work from your eyes?
Thank you, Shaurav. I would go back into history much before IRSDC was formed, because we were involved with the New Delhi railway station converting into world class. That was what the first project in India was called. And that was to be ready for the 2010 Commonwealth Games. So the project started off in 2005 when the railways invited global tenders for designing world class station. But then, like Mr. Roya pointed out rightly, railways were not used to understanding the complexity. So there was no interaction with the other stakeholders involved with the station development. There was no interaction with the Delhi police, the traffic part of it, or even the NDMC. None of them were involved. So when the plans were made and presented to the railway board and the chief minister then of Delhi, everybody was surprised that we were planning of almost, I think, 50 million square feet or something much bigger, but none of the others were involved, and that's where the whole plan got shelved. So there has been this kind of inward-looking issue first, from the railways, who've not looked at multiple stakeholders in development, because station, like again what Mr. Loya pointed out, is a very complex project. It's not single stakeholder, because you need to get people in from outside into the station. Now, who takes care of that? The railway doesn't own land outside the station. That has to be taken care by somebody. You need the kind of water, electricity, everything. So you need to talk to multiple stakeholders when you're planning that. Unfortunately, in the earlier times, before IRDC was formed, that was not happening. And that is one of the reasons why such a big project failed. Thankfully, IRSDC started doing that. And again, we were successful. We developed 2 projects along with IRSDC. We planned and yes, put it out for bid. For various reasons, yes, again, because money doesn't come out of thin air. PPP was not successful because normally to have a bankable project, you need to know your money stream. And money stream normally comes from traffic flows. So-called non-fare box revenue can be there. But then it becomes a hotel attached to a station, not a station with a hotel. So the whole idea was that unless you know what kind of traffic is going to come, not now, but 15 years down the line, which IRCC had no control. They had no control over train running on the station. So they were dependent on Indian Railways to give that number, and Railways didn't have a 20-year master plan for that. So according to an outsider, these were some of the shortcomings which never actually really took off, and eventually Railways had to do it on a EPC basis. Because when we were assisting some of the bidders, this was the first question, that is it a bankable report? Yes, architecturally it might be fine, engineering might be good, but where is the money? And that's where the the discussion stopped.
Right. Okay. Mr. Lee, I'll come back to you. Mr. Srivastava talked about 2 things. One was that, PPP not working. And that's very important part of non-GBS, capex that comes to. This was a very good chance that could have been, non-GBS capex could have been increased. That did not happen. But, we were having discussions here yesterday and we were talking about Marhora and, those locomotive plants, which were. So the point was that the design of the contract was foolproof. It was robust. Do you think somewhere in framing the way we were going about station redevelopment had some flaws, and if some of the key learnings that at least from now on we should keep in mind going ahead if we have to, get into PPPs?
If you talk of Madhepura and Marora, the PPP is assured offtake. So if you draw a very gross parallel, it is kind of BOT annuity. So you have invested your money and you will get a return. Because railway has given you guarantee that it will be buying all the locos that you will be providing. So your risk which you have taken is construction risk, the technology risk, remaining risk of revenue, etc. is all taken by railways. So if in a station development, the revenue risk is taken by railways, then there is no problem. But railway did not agree. It was not the structuring of the contract. It was the outlines which were given that this is what we will give. And that require a defined revenue stream. In case of Madhepura Marora, there is a defined revenue stream. So in a PPP, you have to allocate all the risk, which party is able to handle which risk the best. But you cannot tie all the hands and then say that this is not a good structuring of PPP. So I don't think there was any problem about structuring of PPP. Yes, there was issues because railway also said you cannot do any residential development. Only 45 years of lease is allowed. So even in real estate development, railway again tried to tie the hands of the concessionaire that you cannot do mixed use development. So I think IRSDC was able to make this difference felt in the entire government, and from the cabinet, the approval in 2019 came that up to 99 years of lease, multiple subleases, mixed use development. So all those things which are actually required to make real estate monetizable on a long term. So that was done. But as I said, people were afraid to deal with land. So there were a number of issues. This was not at all a contractual structuring issue. It is what the givens were given by the government. Accordingly, only you could go ahead.
Thank you so much. This topic is something very near to my heart because I've covered it extensively as a reporter. So that's why I had these questions. And given that was one of the key topic areas here, so I thought we'll spend some time discussing about it. Thank you so much. Mr. Gautam, I'll come to you now. So, when we talk about uplifting and modernization of railways, obviously apart from railway stations, other rolling stock, right? And we have seen, Vande Bharat, we have seen the axle load capacity going up, and we have more plans to go even higher. what are the other major research that is happening or developments that could be expected in terms of rolling stock in the coming days?
Thank you. I'd like to go on a slightly different perspective here. As we all know that Gati Shakti was announced by the Honorable Prime Minister and with a very big investment of 100 lakh crore. Now, Gati Shakti is a plan, is a master plan to integrate. We have been talking about seamless transport for passengers, freight, and connectivity, accessibility, and all those things. So Gati Shakti provides you that, and Gati Shakti cannot succeed without railways acting as a backbone of Gati Shakti. A similar program was launched in Europe in 2000 called the Shift to Rail program, which is quite similar to what we are doing here in now, Gati Shakti, where the modal share of Indian railways, modal share of railways, European railways, was to increase to 50% in freight or maybe 60% in passenger, something like that. The idea is again that efficiency, emissions, and ease of. So, in that context, we have to now think. Railways by itself cannot exist. It has to exist in the wider canvas of transport. India is a single transport area. And if you look at the objectives of the PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan, like provide seamless transport, multimodal, then single Indian transport area, reduce logistics cost, 14 to 8, modal share of railways increasing 50-60%, then developing mobility as a service. And why I'm saying all this, because I'm going to come to the technology part after talking about this. There's a background here. And then increasing the energy efficiency, reducing the pollutions, and make the Indian industry competitive. So these are the noble aims. That is not only for the railways, this is for the whole country. It affects the whole country. Now, if these objectives have to be met, then there has to be a very much integrated planning of all these sectors, whether it is rail, road, air, urban, suburban transport, anything. And for that, we would require a very versatile railway. And the first challenge, the most important challenge for this to happen, for this to come about, is to increase the speeds of trains. It is stated objective of Indian Railways to increase the average speed of freight trains to 50 and of passenger trains to average speed, 75. Stated objective. Now, that is the most critical thing if we want to run more trains and we want to have, all types of services that service on demand and all those things, and also reduce the cost. So technology development in that area, and if we do a benchmarking with countries like China, Korea, Japan, even Europe of course is far ahead. They have been gradually increasing the speeds of the tracks. China, for example, had 6 programs, and today all their tracks are fit for 160 to 200 kilometers, the traditional tracks. Besides that, they have the high-speed tracks, which is almost 48,000 kilometers. So in my opinion, and we have discussed that in other forums also, track technology, increasing the track capability by bringing in the latest technology to increase the track speed capability is the very first thing. The second technology is that we need to have the train communication and control. For example, in metros, we have communication-based train control. On the European, we have got European train control systems. A similar system has to come for Indian Railways. And these are the 2 main areas in which Indian Railways is thinking that we must go ahead with it. And this itself is a very high technology issue, whether it is a track or it is a bridge or it is even a culvert, or if you have to cover any structure. There's a lot of investment required and lot of technology required in these 2 areas. Then, if we come to the multimodal and the seamless experience of transport, so there the integration of the IT portion and the development of the IT for the passenger to use railway or roadways or whatever ways becomes very important. So these are the three technology areas. And for the railways to get the 50% share in the freight or more than 50% share, we have to now think of high speed trains. In Europe, we already have 160 kilometers per hour trains, freight trains. So we have to think of 160 at least, if not 200. So, and then with that, the smart rolling stock and where they are connected, and there are lots of technologies going on. It will take a long time for me to tell about all the technologies, like virtual coupling and all that. This is happening today in Europe, in China. So we'll have to really catch up. And the last but not the least is that we have to develop RDSO into a world-class research organization. Right now we are not designed for that. So, like for example, China started, and we started in 1952, and today China is ahead of us at least by 300 years, having built 48,000 kilometers of high-speed train. So that should give us some food for thought. Thanks.
Okay, all right. So I mean, it's very strange because Vande Bharat tested at 180 kilometers, capacity of 160, but it's running at 130. That's one benchmark that we have set. And the other side, the average passenger train speed is 50 kilometers right now, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
So like we have to go 50% up. So that's a massive jump that we are looking at.
Yes.
So are we really working? As you said, that RDSO is not, is not designed to do, right now as a world-class research organization. What's stopping the government? I mean, obviously we now know that this government, at least this dispensation, has focus on infrastructure. What is the impediment there?
There's no impediment. I am just telling the fact. It's a historical issue. The previous governments have also tried to uplift RDSO, and there have been many approaches. For example, there have been criticism of the CSIR, for example, DRDO, that they have not been able to deliver to the extent that they should have. So the government has established, there's no impediment, let me clear that first. Already established 4 Center for Railway Research in 4 IITs, IIT Kharagpur, Kanpur, Madras, and Roorkee. And we are expanding that. We are having a collaboration between industry, academia, scientists to develop the technologies, because without these 3 pillars, technology cannot develop in the country. Right now, the technologies for the metros are totally imported, whether it is your signaling system or whether it is your propulsion system. So those are the areas where we have to work for the high speed and for the increasing speed. The track itself, I told you, that it will take a lot of effort and a very concentrated effort, which is happening. But with the coming of Gati Shakti, which has propelled the nation into thinking these difficult questions, it's now high time for to get it. And government is doing its bit in that area. There's no impediment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one request from the entire audience here and from other people also whom I meet outside: before you increase the speeds, please put coverage system entirely at all the places, because otherwise there's no point in increasing the speed. We'll all be colliding into each other. So having said that, I'll ask you the question which I want to ask.
Let me just talk about this. Kavach is one part of the communication-based train control. Just one part of it. That is called automatic train protection. Kavach is automatic train protection. We have 4 more parts of that: automatic train operation, automatic train supervision, automatic train
anti-collision.
Collision is protection. ATP is the Kavach. Yes. ATP is the Kavach. And then there's automatic point operation. So there are 4 elements of a train control system. So we have developed this Kavach, and we're working on other areas also. And as I told you, that technology development is not an event management. It is not an event management. It is a very, very intense, and it is almost a noiseless work which goes on for years together. For China to come up to this level, they have taken almost 40 years. So we have to go through that grill. That kind of thing I'm saying.
So which side of the argument are you, that the industry is not ready with the product to put Kavach on the entire tracks, or that it's not matured enough to be implemented right now?
Okay, first of all, let me just give a disclaimer here. I do not work in the area of Kavach.
I know. Yes.
Okay, so there are signal S&T engineers who work in the area of Kavach. They should be better. But whatever I have learned from my colleagues, I'll tell you, there's no impediment as such to putting Kavach. It's a matter of you have to run the show, you have to run the trains, you have to put the Kavach, you have to maintain the tracks. It's a complex system. Having almost 3.5 lakh wagons, almost 1 lakh coaches, lakhs of signals. You see, gelling everything together, and there are historical issues, quality issues, because something was developed, let's say, 100 years back. So it is not an easy thing, and we are a democracy, like land acquisition, as you said. In China, you can just ask the person to get out of the land. We cannot do it here in India. Suppose I have to, do something, then so it is being done. I'm not saying it is being done. I think the last 10 years have seen a massive increase in the rate of implementation of things. But still, more innovative ways may require to be found out. So there's no impediment or that there's no will. Everybody is willing. People realize. But then Kavach, I told you, is only one element. There are more elements. We are talking about now complete communication-based train control. Not only Kavach. Kavach is just ATP part of it. So that thinking is going on and people are working. Industry also is coming up. We are having lots of, RDSO has had 4 industry and these exhibitions, as I can remember, in which we invite the industry, they come over, and ETRail. That's for that purpose.
I'm sure, and I'm hopeful that this thing will be done ASAP, because even loss of one life is not something any of us would really want to. We want. Mr. Lohia, I'll come to you. I know you have to leave at 2:30. We'll be finishing in 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes. I'll come to you. So we talked about land acquisition is not easy. We talked about that when when station redevelopment was required, land was involved, and that's why people are a little reluctant. I want to talk about something else. So when we talk about facelifting railways, we talked about stations, we talked about tracks. The other thing is the other assets that we have, and which are delegated even to the level of DRMs, right? But still they are not managed or monetized properly. What can be done there to empower them to take care of those assets? I mean, railways, the biggest landlord probably on the planet.
See, many times what happens, of course, there was no land acquisition involved as far as it was all railway land, but yes, there was a huge challenge. Establishing your ownership was a problem because many places the land was with the railways, but railway could not establish the ownership papers. And unless until you establish the entire chain of ownership, no private player is going to invest there. So that was a huge challenge, and that we were facing at most of the places.
I remember the lands were at different places also that were offered, not only at the station area, if I'm not wrong.
Mostly they were at the station or vicinity. It was not very much different. So I give the example of Habibganj, Bhopal, which we developed.
Yes.
So land was in the vicinity.
Yes.
And that is the only successful PPP project which has been completed. Despite all these experienced railway officers, they had betted with me that this can never be completed, and we belied them that it was successfully completed and it is running well. How exactly the assets which are owned by the government, how can they be maintained? So we took another challenge from the railways. We took stations only for integrated facility management. So without doing any capital investment, we took the stations as it is, which were normally all loss making. We took that risk against, I would say, the advice of our board also. The railway board also, everybody said that you are doing a very big mistake. This cannot happen. So we took those stations and then started looking them at as a, because the strength that you have is footfalls and eyeballs, and the centrality of the location. So these strengths you cannot actually monetize if you are just a transportation officer. You have to think like a real estate. You have to think like a facility manager. You have to think how exactly you can monetize. So what will and should be done, where exactly the passenger movement is there, how exactly you can facilitate them and yet monetize that piece. Because from railway thinking, one DRM came, we took 5 stations from railways and we said that we'll transform them without any financial support from railways. 15 years we will do the maintenance. And one DRM, he said that you make a cloakroom here. And that was the busiest area where the people will be going. I said, it is absolutely against the principles. A cloakroom will be used by a passenger who is having at least 6 hours to spend at this station or waiting time. So you can ask him to walk 5 more minutes and take him to an area which is not monetizable easily because the public footfall is not there. This area can be better utilized because there is a huge requirement of e-tables. So it was a challenge because DRMs thought that I have given the orders and why you are not following the orders? You are just a corporation. I said, it is not a question of orders. I am making money for you and I am giving facilities to the people. So I think that thinking change can happen once this integrated thinking, because it was given to us as a cost center. So we were to bear all the costs and we were also to make the revenue. We could make all those stations, I would say revenue surplus within a period of about just about a year, and then COVID stuck. But despite COVID, when the revenue became zero, still we could survive, we could maintain all these stations, we could do investment. The revenues be multiplied by, I would say, 300 to 400%. So a corporate like thinking which is required, instead of giving each stall piecemeal, where you are working from part to whole, it cannot work. You have to give as a integrator approach for the entire facility management. So I think that is one thing, and that can be extended to other assets also, which Railways have.
So thank you so much, everyone. There's a time limit which we have to adhere to. 2:30 is have been given. Quickly to summarize, I understand that a lot of things are being done at the level of in terms of research and development. Vande Bharat is one of the finest examples. We are very proud of that. And also, as I said, that it's a huge organization, 200 years old, so many legacy issues. No one till now, no one bothered to understand why railways was a separate budget, till someone had to really tell them that, why do we need a separate budget? Things are happening, moving. There are great minds working for the railways. And we are very hopeful that the national transporter will become a world leader at some point in time. Thank you so much, everyone.